Pokémon has been on the air and beloved by fans since it first came out in 1997. While fans in North America might think they know everything about their favorite animated franchise, they might be surprised to learn that there are actually a ton of deleted scenes that never made it from overseas and to their living rooms. Anime has never been as squeamish about things like showing a little extra skin in the same way that American TV shows often have to be to get past censors, which often results in shows having to be altered from their original versions before making it to the US. The Pokémon episode Beauty and the Beach is one episode in particular that had to be seriously edited before it was given the okay to air. Mostly because of a scene where, once the gang makes it to the Porta Vista Beach and are enjoying some fun in the sun, we see Team Rocket's James like we've never seen him before. He cross-dresses in the episode, rocking a bikini and a pair of inflatable breasts to fill in the material. Add in a couple jokes to his female friends about the 2 round balloons, and this is the reason American censors gave a hard pass. Years later, these scenes were cut, and Beauty and the Beach was eventually released as a lost episode. We're sensing a bit of a pattern here, and you'll soon understand what we mean. Another scene that was deemed too scandalous for American eyes was from an episode titled Got Miltank? That aired in the States in 2002. In the episode, we see Cyndaquil and Meowth wind up lost in the desert, badly hurt and separated from the rest of the group. In order to survive, they're taken to a Miltank, who is able to heal them if they drink its healing milk drink ability. Only in the original Japanese version, the two drink from it like a baby calf might, which proved just a little too raunchy for American sensibilities. So, the scene was chopped from the dubbed version. Remember that pattern we mentioned just a moment ago? Well, we got another one for you coming right up. Only with this one, we kind of understand why the censors weren't so keen to have it air on American TV. In the episode The Kangaskhan Kid, Misty, Ash, and Brock meet a young boy who is raised by Kangaskhan, a la the Jungle Book. Only instead of some fun songs about the bare necessities and all that, this episode took a bit of a creepy turn. In the scene that was deleted, the young boy asks Misty if he can, well, drink from her. You get the picture. The camera zooms in on her chest as she smacks the boy out of the way. Rightly so, we might add. It's not just the TV show and movies that were causing problems for an American audience either. The video games were often found to be a little more saucy than was appreciated, in more ways than one. Take Pokemon Gold and Silver, for instance. In that game, the beauty trainer was depicted in a blue and white outfit that included a pair of shorts. For the American release, the makers of the game actually had to add a few inches onto the length, taking them from mid-thigh to knee level, as her shorts were deemed just a little too scandalous. It might seem like a lot of work for a tiny detail, and it is. While American movies are pretty gun-happy these days, usually they come with at least a PG-13 rating. Well, the creators of Pokemon felt that it wasn't such a big deal to feature an episode packed full of guns, most of the time being pointed at kids. So, you know what happened there. The episode The Legend of Dratini was banned entirely because there was just so much gun brandishing that they couldn't edit it out with any episode left to spare. Particularly, a moment in which the game warden of the Safari Zone points a gun squarely between Ash's eyes at point-blank range. While we never fired it, we can see how this might have set off a couple of alarm bells. While we totally understand why having a gun directly pointed at your preteen protagonist maybe isn't the best influence, sometimes these edits become a little bit silly. Take, for example, a scene that was changed in the episode Snow Way Out. During the episode, we see Meowth and Team Rocket struggling to survive inside a freezing igloo. While James ponders what the crew are going to do to survive, Meowth takes out a couple of matches and lights one to keep warm. In the American version, his match was changed to a birthday candle? In an effort to discourage children from using matches, which sure is a good thing to do, but it's also a tiny bit of an overreaction if you ask us. No one really anticipated what a huge phenomenon Pokemon cards were going to become in North America, so when they became the most coveted item on the planet, American distributors became extra diligent about making sure the images of the cards were family-friendly. The original versions of some were definitely not, like in the case of the Grimer card. In the Japanese version, he is seen peeking out from under a manhole cover and directly up a girl's skirt, who appears to be in a school uniform and everything. Well, that definitely didn't fly, and his eyes were changed into a much friendlier cross-eyed expression before it was released in the good old US of A. If there's one thing a children's TV show shouldn't have, it's references to one of the most horrifying wars of all time, right? That's not such a crazy idea, is it? You'd think so, but in the case of Pokemon, that was apparently not so obvious. In the episode All Things Bright and Beautify, there is a scene that features Meowth, James, and Jessie talking to a big group of Team Rocket grunts, all in their standard uniform. Then in one very startling moment, everyone does the exact same salute that the German army made infamous during World War II, in terrifying unison. It was obviously cut for American audiences, and we have no questions as to why. Another thing that the censors wanted to avoid when dealing with a children's cartoon was alcohol. While it's always hard to tell what an animated character is eating or drinking, they took no chances with the possibility that they might be making drinking look glamorous or appealing to the younger set. So in the episode Critical Situation, Bakuong Vs Juptile, they made a very subtle switch. Giovanni, the leader of Team Rocket, is seen sipping on wine out of a standard long-stemmed wine glass. For broadcast in the States, the stem was removed to make it more ambiguous. It's not hard to understand why the episode The Tower of Terror was altered for American broadcast after the events of 9/11, or why the network would no longer want an episode airing with a title like that. Well, it did originally air in the States in 1998. Immediately after the national tragedy, the episode was removed. They also pulled the episode from broadcast entirely after September 11th, only choosing to put it back into rotation over a year later. Funny enough, the United States is the only place where the episode has this title. It's otherwise known as Capture at the Pokemon Tower. And if they had stuck with that, it might not have had to be pulled out of the lineup in the first place. While most cartoon violence is acceptable on TV these days, cartoon nudity is still pretty taboo in America. It is a kid's show after all. So, in order for the opening song to be appropriate for Western audiences, there was actually a lyric that had to be edited out from the original version. While the song remains completely epic and one of the best anthems ever, it once contained a lyric that might make some parents squirm. It used to go, "I'll get you, Pokemon, even in fire, and grass, and forests, and ground, and clouds, and that girl's skirt," followed by a little scream. Not all changes and cuts are made because they're deemed too offensive or inappropriate. Sometimes it's just a matter of translation between cultures. The episode The Ghosts of Maiden's Peak is a perfect example of that. In the episode, we see the characters using something called Ofuda in order to protect themselves from Ghastly. Ofuda is a Shinto talisman that is common and would be well known in Japanese culture, but would be difficult to explain to American children in a short amount of time. So, for the West, Ofuda was changed to anti-ghost stickers, which, while not really the same thing, did the job. Kids love stickers. Or they did, before they all had iPads. Sometimes it's not just a scene or a lyric that needs to be changed up for a different audience, but a big part of the design of a character entirely. This didn't happen much, but one character in particular proved a little bit problematic, to say the least. We all know Jinx, the purple-skinned, blonde-haired humanoid who resembles a woman, sort of. Well, in Jinx's original design, she looked a little different. Instead of purple, her skin was black, which immediately set off alarm bells as she looked way too much like an old racist stereotype that has long been considered very offensive. After some serious backlash, her skin color was changed into the purple we know and love today. Remember the episode The Tower of Terror that we mentioned earlier? Well, it turns out it wasn't the only episode of Pokemon that had to be taken off the air surrounding the events of 9/11. Another one, titled Tentacool and Tentacruel, that originally aired in '98, was removed from broadcasting entirely after the September 11th attacks. It wasn't directly insensitive towards the tragedy, but was just a little too close to home to be comfortable. In the episode, we see Tentacruel on a rampage and destroying a bunch of skyscrapers in its wake. One of them happened to look just like the World Trade Center, so you can see why the television network wouldn't want this episode on the air. No body part seems to cause quite as many problems with the censors as a woman's chest, even if that chest in question actually belongs to a cartoon dinosaur. We're talking about Nidoqueen, whose battle cry had to be changed for American audiences in the game Pokemon Stadium. And yes, we know she's not actually a dinosaur, but let's be real here, she could totally pass for one. Anyway, originally, when a user selected Nidoqueen for battle, she would grab her pectoral area for emphasis. This, of course, was deemed inappropriate, and her battle cry was changed for the American version of the game so as not to make anyone uncomfortable. Another big change that was made from the original version came from the Pokemon Black and White era video games. In them, we were introduced to a character named Leonora, a gym leader whose costume featured a pink apron. While that might not sound like a big deal, Leonora is one of the only black characters in the Pokemon universe, and to make her a maid was just, well, it wasn't the best. Originally in the game, the user was required to answer a bunch of cooking quizzes before the battle as well. For the American version, Leonora's apron was removed, and the cooking challenges were replaced with trivia, so as not to pigeonhole this character as a stereotype. Sometimes it feels like the creators of Pokémon often forget that their main characters are actual children, specifically when it comes to Misty. While she has mostly been treated with care, every now and then something that verged on creepy had to be adjusted before it could make it to North America. Like one of her trading cards. In the original version of a trainer card called Misty's Tears, Misty is actually portrayed totally nude. This clearly did not fly in the West, so the image was changed to feature Squirtle wiping away the tears on Misty's cheek, while a strap from her shirt can clearly be seen, just to make absolutely clear that she was in fact clothed. While so far it has mostly been the women who have taken the brunt of the censorship, there is actually one case in which a male character's outfit was seen as too racy for Western eyes as well. In Pokémon Gold and Silver, there was the male swimmer trainer characters, along with some female ones as well. Originally in his design, the male trainer wore a teeny Olympic-style Speedo. For all the international versions of the game, it was altered to a pair of more acceptable trunks. What's funny is that the female trainers are still pictured in bikinis, whose bottoms are not unlike a Speedo themselves, and remained uncensored for the game's release. Things like violence and underage nudity we can understand censoring, but when it comes to food, get a little bit more confused. Specifically, rice, one of the most common and absolutely essential foods in Japanese cuisine. So much so that children will often pack a ball of rice held together with seaweed known as onigiri in their lunches. Well, when the American network began dubbing Pokémon in English, they bizarrely had a huge problem with rice. They even went so far as to have Brock refer to his onigiri as delicious jelly donuts, and later would actually edit out the rice and replace it with hamburgers. When it came out in 1999, Pokémon the first movie was a massive success. What you might not have realized is that there was actually a pretty big difference between the Japanese and American versions of the film. Apparently, after the movie was released in Japan, an American distributor had some thoughts about how American audiences would relate better to an altered version of the story. In the original version, Mewtwo was less of a straightforward bad guy, and was given a scene at the beginning that detailed his backstory and motivations. But according to the American notes, Western audiences needed a more black and white villain for the good guys to defeat, so the scene was removed and his story changed forever. Everything has an ending, and even Pokémon was supposed to conclude eventually. And actually, the anime was supposed to end after the release of the very first movie, but it was so successful and made so much money internationally that the studios felt they had to keep going. We know it was supposed to end because in early Japanese trailers for the film, there is a shot of an older Misty next to a young girl, who she seems quite close with. Ash's Pikachu is also very comfortable and close with the child, which led most to believe that this was part of a flash forward into Ash and Misty's future as parents. Of course, this was changed, and Ash and Misty have remained as preteens for now. Of course, we couldn't finish without mentioning the most infamous Pokémon episode that was pulled from broadcast entirely. Yeah, we're talking about Cyber Soldier Porygon. The episode with animation so flashy and vibrant that it actually caused thousands of children in Japan to succumb to seizures. The episode aired only one time in Japan and was never seen again. But the incident was heard around the world and would even go on to be parodied by The Simpsons with a joke featuring a show called Battling Seizure Robots. And the official websites didn't even mention its existence. But unfortunately for them, fans remember everything. Would you love to go back and check out all of the uncensored Japanese originals or what? Or do you think that these changes were a good thing for American audiences? Let us know down below, and we hope you enjoyed the video.